You can't use Notion without knowing what a database is. But instead of wandering around aimlessly trying to figure out what you don't know, use this video as a jumping off point to figure out all the complex things that exist under the Notion database umbrella. We're going to take something as simple as a goal tracker and implement 3 different levels of complexity step by step. If you can't create every single goal tracker on the Notion marketplace by the end of this video, then you should probably watch it again. In the beginner level, we're going to create the database, use some layouts to section off properties, and then showcase the database in a gallery view, create a couple of formulas that have labels and progress bars, and we're going to answer the following questions. This is how Notion works. It's a really simplified example, but what we have is something that looks like an Excel spreadsheet, and each of these items in the Excel spreadsheet open up to a page that has a certain number of properties. Those properties are the exact same as if in an Excel spreadsheet you had a bunch of column names. This entire row represents a page in a Notion database. Outside of these type of pages, you also have pages that can just exist by themselves. So for example, I'm going to create a page right over here by using the / command, and I'm going to go ahead and call it backend. The reason I created a page called backend is because I really like to have a place where all of my databases are stored, and I'm going to create that goals database. Easiest way to create a database is using that / command and typing in database, and I highly prefer the full page version just so I can open that up in a full page, and on the actual backend over here, it only takes up 1 line worth of space. If I went ahead and turned into an inline database, it would take up quite a bit of this backend page, so I will prefer having it like this. Super simple. We are going to call this goals, and then you can see what I explained in the Excel plus Word example over here, where this thing that exists is going to look very similar to an Excel spreadsheet, and we are going to be able to name the different properties and add different properties as well, and properties are the column names that we're going to be assigning. And just a disclaimer, if you're coming from a programming or SQL background, this is the equivalent of a SQL table, and this is what a Notion database looks like. There is a title object, which kind of has to exist for every Notion database, and then all of those properties on the side here, they're defined like this in an ERD diagram, and this is how they translate over to a Notion database. This is something that I do very often, and I just like to rename this first view right over here, and I will go more in depth into what views are in just a little bit. So the first thing we are going to do is rename this property. Easiest way to rename a property is to go ahead and click and then just rename the property. So this is going to be the actual goal, and all Notion databases have a title property. This can't be removed, unfortunately, at the moment. So I just go ahead and use this as the name of whatever thing I want to put in this database. So I'm also going to go ahead and add a sample item just so you guys can see what we're working with and it isn't so abstract. So I'm going to call this hit 100 followers on Instagram. All right, so we have a title, and as I said earlier, going to keep going back to this example, each of these items will be able to be opened up into a Word document style object, which in Notion is called a Notion page. So using this open button right here, I can open it up. This is opened in side peek. We have a couple of different peek modes here. So you have side peek, center peek, and full peek. So you can set the default pretty easily on what you want to see. And this is side peek. And if I open it up fully, it's going to be full page view. All right, so I know that I want a couple of different things. So one thing that I know that I'm going to need for this goal is I need a place to actually tell my database what this goal means. And just because I wrote the goal here, I need to be able to translate it into something numerical and something qualitative just so I can create that progress bar and the labels that I want to create. So I'm going to add in 2 properties here. The first is going to be the current metric, and that is going to represent where I'm at right now. Say I have 53 followers on Instagram, that is what that is going to look like. Next, I'm going to go ahead and create the goal metric, and that is going to tell me what the final result should look like. So that is going to be 100 for this specific example. To be honest, that's all you really need for this, and you can just look at it very simply and say, okay, I'm at 53, I need to go to 100. And if we put this on our main page over here, it's going to look the exact same as this right here. So the way we link databases in Notion and view databases in places other than this backend page is using a linked database view. So on the right-hand side over here, I'm going to go ahead and create a linked database view just like that. So here I'm going to be prompted to choose the actual database, and I know it's going to be the goals database right over here. All right, I like to hide this, which gets rid of that bulky title, and then I'm going to rename this to all goals. So now we can see exactly what we want to see over here. We can also see it over here. Because it's a linked view, we can also add new goals over here, and those same things will pop up over here. This is basically like looking into a window of a house where the goals database is the house, and we're using this window to see the entire house right now. We can also use this window to see just parts of the house by using a filter right over here. So instead of all goals, let's say we want to see incomplete goals. And let's say we've completed this goal by going over the goal metric. So we can say something like the current metric is greater than the goal metric. In Notion, we can't compare properties in a filter. So I'm going to create a fourth property to figure out whether I'm finished with my goal or not. So I'm going to use a formula down here, and I'm going to say completed, and I'm going to use a question mark to mark that it is a Boolean value or a true or false item. Here, I'm just going to say the same thing that I was looking for. Current metric is greater or equal to goal metric. And this formula just allows us to compare those two values. So if it's true, it's going to be positive, or it's going to be checked, and if it's not true, it's going to be unchecked. So I'm going to say completed is unchecked. So now it's the same window, but we're using this window, this linked view, to look into just part of the house, which is the goals database. All right, we can also window in a different way. So we can go ahead and get rid of this because I can just hide it from here. So now we are using our window to look at just a couple of the properties that are populated here and just a couple of the row items. So that's what this linked database window allows us to do. It allows us to just see certain things that we actually care about and ignore the things that are no longer relevant to our main page. We've showcased our database in a table view. So if I hover over this right here, you can see that it says table view, and a table view is basically what this is. We can see everything in a table. So I'm actually going to go ahead and do this second guy right here. We're going to showcase this database in a gallery view so it looks just a little bit better. So I can do that right over here, but I'm going to show you guys how to add other views and toggle between the two. So when I press that button right here, it's going to ask me what type of view I want. Let's go over what we have here. So we have an empty view. I don't know what that is. To be honest, it's just going to be empty, and then you're going to have to choose it again. So don't choose that if you know what you want. Then we have table, board, chart, list, timeline, calendar, and gallery. We want a gallery view, so that's what we're going to use right now. And then things like charts are for looking at charts. Things like lists are going to be a little bit more simple version of this, and you can see all of those different things in Pinterest, Notion Marketplace, and anywhere that you get your Notion content. All right, so here I've opened up the gallery view, and I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to hide that database title. I'm going to rename this. You can also go ahead and choose which one you want to be the default view. By default, it's just going to be the first one in the list. So every time I open up this page, I go ahead and refresh it. It's going to be on this first view right over here. All right, now I'm seeing only some of the information, and I feel like my window here is a bit too small because I can see the name of the view. I'm seeing some type of image up here that I don't really care about, and I'm not seeing the important thing, which is, am I done with the goal? Am I started the goal? What is going on? So let's go ahead over to this triple dot button over here. The easiest thing to do is show all, just to see what everything looks like, and I'm going to go ahead and hide this completed button because I can see that certain things are completed, and these are also going to be incomplete goals that I want to see. I don't want to see completed goals at the moment. All right, so I can see that these are the numbers that I'm working with, but if you are familiar with user design, this seems a little too lame, for lack of a better word. It just tells me two different numbers. Honestly, I was seeing the same thing in the goal view, so let's go ahead and create some labels so this looks a bit prettier to us. I'm also going to hide this card up here because I don't have any images. So this is like, for example, if I put an image in here or put text in here, I'll be able to see that over here, and this shows the inside of the page, but I don't think I'm going to use that right now, so I'm going to go ahead and hide that. The way I'm going to do that is click these dots over here, select the card preview, and then put it at none. So I'm hiding those things right there. And if I have anything inside the page, I also don't want this default icon to show up. So I'm also going to click off the show page icon toggle. So here we have the basic information that we wanted, and then we are also finally going to do incomplete goal cards just as another practice on using filters, and we are going to say completed is unchecked. You can also go ahead and very quickly duplicate this to see completed goal cards. We've gone ahead and changed the title, but the way we're going to change what this actually shows is by going back to that filter tab and doing completed is checked instead of unchecked. So here we're going to see things that we've completed, and here we're going to see things that we have not yet completed. So now let's go back to what we were talking about the user flow and user design, and create some formulas that help us see what's going on a little bit better. All right, so current metric, goal metric, and then I'm going to go ahead and add in a text property that tells me the goal unit. So the goal unit is going to represent what this word is. So it's going to say followers for Instagram and subscribers for YouTube. So it just gives us an easy way to actually create our formula. So it's going to look something like this. You need to use quotations to denote text. And if you don't use quotations, it will assume that you're referring to a variable that's already been predefined. Currently at, and I'm going to add in the current metric right over here. So plus current metric, basically adding together the different things that we want to show up here. And then finally, I'm going to use that goal unit that we created. I don't need the quotation because this is a variable that's predefined. And I'm going to go ahead and save that. Now, if you look over here, we can see that we have some type of gap here, or a gap that we need. So I'm going to go ahead and add in a space right over here inside quotation marks, because that space is a text object and it is not a variable that's predefined. And I can also go ahead and add in a period at the end, like that, and go ahead and save that. Nice, so let's go ahead and see how we can change our window to show this instead of what we see right over here. So pretty simple, pretty straightforward. We're just going to get rid of those two. We're going to show our current label. Currently at 300 subscribers, and here, edit it as well. All right, so things are looking pretty good, and I also want to see a progress bar, because now we've taken away one piece of information, which is this value, even though it is in the title, but I want to see a progress bar. So we've created a label using a formula. We're going to create a progress bar that gives us a little bit of color, gives us a little bit of design that tells us the information really quickly, and gives us a percentage to see where we are in our progress. So here I'm going to create another formula. I'm going to call it progress bar. It's very simple. It's just going to be the current metric divided by the goal metric. All right, so we can see that this is 1.01 and this is 0.3. I want it to be a percentage, so I'm going to go ahead and open it up and click Edit Property. It gives me a bunch of different information here. I'm going to say the number format should be a percent. Number of decimal places I want to see is maybe 1. This one's exactly at 30%, and that one's exactly at 101%, so that's not really relevant right now, but say we had like 301, then we'd be at 30.1%. All right, and then finally, I'm also going to go ahead and show it as a bar, and I'm going to change the color to a gray color, maybe a blue color. That looks better. And we are going to head back here and pop that onto our screen using the properties. So this comes up here. We are at 30.1%, 301 subscribers. This is much more useful if we were at some type of odd number that isn't easily divisible and able to find a, I don't know, let's do 900, 990, change this to 990, there. I wouldn't know that 301 is 30.4% of 990 very easily, so that is what we have right here. All right, so we've gone ahead and created that progress bar. I'm going to go ahead and populate it over here. Ideally, I would have just fixed everything that I wanted to here and then duplicated it, but you know, this is here, it's fine. It's not that big of a deal. And we still don't see it here, but I don't really care about this table view because I'm not interested in looking at the goals in the table view, so I am just going to delete it. All right, so we have the incomplete goals. I'm going to rename this to just say goals because that makes more sense to me. And here I'm going to rename this to completed goals. All right, and I'm going to pop that progress bar right on top. 101%. I usually, in my completed goals, I stop incrementing this value. So right now for incrementation, we go inside, we change this. So say we have 331 subscribers now, go and increment it. And if I have completed a goal, my next thing that I would do is create a new goal. So my new goal is going to be hit maybe 500. I want my future metric to be 500, and then the rest of the information is the same. So this hit 100 followers on Instagram has already been completed. You can go here and see that we have 990 subs that hasn't been completed. We have this that hasn't been completed. We can also do a little bit more here. We can go ahead and sort it by the progress bar. So we can see firsthand the least progressed item. All right, and then finally, we are going to use layouts to section off those properties. It's a relatively recent Notion update. It's been a couple of months, but let's go ahead and learn how to customize a layout. So I hit that customize layout button. We can see that we have the heading over here, which has space for 4 pinned properties. We have the property group over here. You're only allowed 1 property group, but you can section these items. And we have some space down here to put things just on their own. So I'm going to start at the top over here. Usually I just get everything out of the way so I can start from scratch. So I throw this property group onto the side panel. And if I go ahead and apply that, if I open up any of these, all I'm going to see is this empty page. I'm going to click View Details to see the properties. So let's go back to customizing the layout. I am going to pin a couple of things. I think I want to pin things that I'm going to edit so I have easy access to edit them, which is going to be the current metric, maybe the goal metric, and then the goal unit. And then I'm going to add down here the label, and I am going to add in the progress bar at the top over here. All right, cool, that looks pretty good. And then one thing that I've been pretty diligent about is adding in sections here. So I like to add in 4 sections. I start with the backend. So I usually add those in all the time and move things where they need to. So this is going to be a probably just a backend property for me, and I'm going to go ahead and always hide it because it's just used for filters at the moment. And for example, current metric, goal unit would all be under settings because those are things that we set, and then current label would be under display because this is mainly used for display. So if we go ahead and complete that, we see it like this. And then finally, I want to get rid of this comment area over here. Head back to customize layout, go to page settings, and then set both of these as off. And then if you also want to hide these property icons, you can go ahead and hide those as well. I am not pretty standard with those, so you can do whatever you like. So now that we have completed that, we can go ahead and see that when we open this, we have these really easy to edit, and we can go ahead and mark this as complete. Finally, I'm going to go ahead and go over some of these questions. So we've gone over what a database is. Let's go ahead and create a simple template. All right. Honestly, what do I want to set in this template? Maybe I'll just set a sample goal unit. So I'll go ahead and say followers for this. And that way it will automatically update. And let's say I'm at 0 and the goal metric is 100. So this is just to have some sample data. I don't think it's really relevant for this, but this is going to be a template, and then I'm going to go ahead and set that as default for all views. So if I go ahead and create a new item here, it already has these filled out. So instead of figuring out, especially if someone else is using the system, instead of them figuring out what they need to actually put here, they can use it as sample data and say something like rather than connections, and then we can just leave that and say we're at like 1 follower. All right, cool. So that's how you create a simple template and then apply it to everything by using that set as default. So for default templates, you can also go ahead and set an icon for all of these. I'm going to go ahead and set a little flag icon that I have here. That's on Notion. You can't see it here, but any new page that I create will have that icon, and it'll just sit here. And we can also go ahead and show the page icons now and see all of those here. If you want to mass update all of these pages and change their icons to look like that template icon, we can go ahead and select everything. And then I'm right-clicking, editing icon, and then I'm choosing the icon that I just had. And then finally, let's go over this and use some conditional logic to go ahead and update this. For example, if I'm only at 1 follower, I don't want it to say currently at 1 followers, I want it to say currently at 1 follower. So we are going to take this goal unit and assume that it is always plural, and we are going to go ahead and fix this logic right over here by adding in some variables. So I'm going to use a let statement. This lets you set some variables and then have some type of output. So I'm going to add in some comments that tell you what everything is. So variables is going to be just this goal unit. So I'm going to say goal unit, it's going to be goal unit. And then we are also going to say is plural. I'm going to say goal metric, no, not goal metric, current metric is equal to, or I guess it's not equal to 1. So if the current metric is not equal to 1, then it will be plural, and if it is equal to 1, this is going to be false. So what we're going to do is here, I'm going to take this goal unit and I'm going to strip off that S at the end because I'm assuming it's always going to be plural. All right, and then I want to see what this looks like, so let's replace this with goal unit. Okay, cool. So it says currently at 1 follower, and then I'm going to tab this. So here you can see that the output is going to be this line plus this line plus this line down here. It looks the exact same. These spaces and enters don't really mean anything in the end result. And then here I'm going to use an if statement, which is what conditional logic is. So if a certain condition is true, I want this goal unit to be plural, and if it's not true, I don't want it to be plural. So I'm going to say if is plural, I want to use the goal unit here, and then if not, I am going to go here and I'm going to rename this to goal unit singular. Okay, there we go. Cool. So now if we go ahead and double check this, we have the variables up here, the output down here. If I go ahead and save this and I go inside and update this value, I can see that it's gone ahead and been updated. And this is the same formula across all these pages. That's the way it is in a Notion database. Formulas are the same for all row items. So if I go ahead and update this as well, it will be the same information. All right, so we've gone over everything in the beginner section. It was a lot of information to take in, so I would definitely recommend just going through and trying to answer these questions by yourself and going and trying to create these things on your own without checking the tutorial to gain proficiency in creating Notion databases and creating formulas and creating layouts and figuring out conditional logic. All right, so things are looking good, and now we can move on to a more complex version of this goals database. And if you feel like you are still a beginner, that's perfectly fine. You can definitely follow through this entire tutorial, and you will have all the information that you need to fully set up the advanced goals database. So let's go ahead and jump right in. We have a couple of things sitting here for the intermediate section. So we're going to use database buttons to increment progress. So here, every time I want to change the value, so say I have now 12 followers on LinkedIn, I have to go ahead, open it up, and edit that value. But instead of doing that, I want to be able to manually update it using some type of button. I also want to add a time frame so I can see actual progress versus expected progress. Now, this is something I actually added relatively recently, but we can see it over here in my goal post where we have, I want to get to 500 subscribers in 2025, and I'm currently at 170 subscribers. My time frame for this was the entire year of 2025, so 365 days. So ideally, if I was on track, I should have been 12.9% of the way completed. Evidently, I'm definitely way above track since I'm at 34%. So I like seeing that as motivation to see if I'm on track or above track or something like that. And then again, you can also see this watch hour problem. So we can see that, again, this is for the entirety of 2025. I should be 12.9% of the way there. So now instead of tackling subscriber count right now, it makes a lot more sense for me to go ahead and tackle watch hours because I am not where I need to be and I'm not on track for the watch hours. If your team uses a scoreboard at work or something like that, you're probably very familiar with this concept where you have a certain progress level that you need to be at every point in the year. And if you're not meeting those progress levels, you need to dedicate more time and manpower to those tasks. We're also going to add some styling to our formula, so make this bold or make it a different color or something like that. And then we're also going to add a second database to store areas to categorize these goals. Finally, we're going to create a relation to areas to actually categorize those goals. I already said that, but that is what we are going to focus on for this intermediate section right here. And I'm going to also just copy this down here so I can see the intermediate things versus the regular basic things. So I'm just going to grab this, Control C, and go over here, Control V. So it is the exact same information that's going to pop up down here. And if you remember the window we were talking about, it's the same window. Now just pretend that you have two windows in the house, and looking through both of those windows, you can see the same exact information. Database buttons are newer in the Notion market, but they're relatively simple to implement, relatively simple to understand, and you just need to understand what you're actually incrementing in a specific formula. So let's head over to goals and add a new item here. I'm actually going to pull it all the way to the front after I create it, but I'm going to scroll all the way down here and click button. So let's do another one. All right, cool. So here, all I'm going to need to do is update this. So I'm going to edit the automation. So when this button is clicked, it needs to do something. Well, I just want to increment whatever I have by 1. So I'm going to go ahead and edit a property. I'm going to edit the current metric, and I'm going to set it to a custom formula, and that's going to be this page dot current metric. So I'm going to grab the existing value for that current metric, and I'm going to add 1. All right, so let's go ahead and save it and see if that works. So I'm looking at this value right over here. I can ignore the completed one, but at this 331 subscribers and click another one, we see that it updated. So let's go ahead and put that at the very bottom right over here. So at the bottom here, I'm going to add in another one, and it is super straightforward, super simple. Got another follower on LinkedIn, was able to plank for another second consistently, and anything that you want over here. All right, so we've done that. Say you are updating things in a higher frequency, I would highly recommend creating multiple buttons. So you can do something like another 10. So if we head over here, I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this property, call it another 10, or another 5, whatever you plan on using, and we are just going to change this to be 10. It's going to be super straightforward. Over here, we're going to show that another 10 button, and we're going to say we got another 10 okay, yeah, it jumped all the way there because of the progress thing, but we went from 13 to 23 followers. So here, I'm going to go ahead and add in some styling to this formula right over here, and I just want it to be bold. I'm going to do something super simple. Over here, in my main Go post, I have it as this code styling, so it's just the code block in Notion. If you use, not like that, but just say text like that, and you mark it as code, it'll be like this kind of highlighted, I don't know how to explain it, but it's used to mark things in code as like variables and stuff. So that's what I have, but I'm just going to do something super simple and just make this bold. So what I'm going to do, so I don't mess up what I have going up here, because this is the final product for the beginner section, I'm going to head down here and I am going to add in another label right over here. So here, I'm going to duplicate this. I'm going to go ahead and say stylized label. And all we're going to do is apply some styling here. So I'm going to take this entire output and I'm going to set a style variable. Okay, so here I'm setting another variable called style, and I'm just going to do B because that's how you style in bold. And then we are going to set this here. We're going to say style, and we're going to apply that to this entire phrase. And I'm going to put it down here, the closing parentheses. I'm going to tab that in, grab this, and tab all of that in. So you can see that we have the output is this style function applied to this entire phrase. All right, so here I'm just going to put in the second thing. So this is the first part of the style function, and then the second part is going to be what the style actually is. So if I want it to be bold, I'm going to do that B over there, and then I'm going to replace this with the style variable, so it is that B. And this is a bit more complex, but if you want to add in multiple styles, you can use this function that I have right here, and any type of styling that we want to add in, you can just add a comma here and add it in. So you could do something like blue background, and that will make this have a blue background, and anywhere else you want to add in styling, you can do that as well. All right, so we can see that's the same thing, but it is stylized. And now over here, instead of this label, I want the stylized label. So I'm going to put in the stylized label and remove the current label. All right, next thing I want to do is add a divider. I don't really like the spacing right here, so I want to add in a empty divider or just a plain divider, so let's go ahead and do that. So I'm actually going to go into the template. This is where I like to add in like any type of display or styling. I'm going to move this, go back into customizing the layout. I'm going to move these buttons at the top because those are actions for me. And I'm going to move the stylized label into display. Cool. I'm going to add in one more display item. It's going to be a divider. And here I'm going to get out of this layout page. And that divider, I think, let's start with making it just a set of text. Let's do like something like that. And then I'm going to copy this. All right. So I've set that divider in the template, and I'm going to pull this in here. You can't see any change because all of these have empty dividers since it is a text property. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab all of these, edit the divider property, and then paste what I have, and then enter. Yeah, I'm just going to leave it as this for now. You know, it just shows you how you can add stuff in and make it interesting. Looking good. These are quite large, but that's okay. For now, I'm gonna hide the another 10 button. I'm gonna hide it for now because I don't really want to use it. And we should be good to go for this section. Oh, this one is going to be a little complicated, but I'm gonna go through it step by step. Just open this up and add it in. So let's see. This is something that's going to be in the display. It's going to be a formula, so I'm going to go ahead and add a formula right over here. I'm going to call this expected progress. And then I'm also going to add in a property called timeframe, which is going to be a duration property. Timeframe. So this allows us to actually give ourselves a time frame for this. I'm going to put that time frame right under here. Grab the time frame and then move it up. All right, cool. And then I'm going to set a value for the time frame. So I'm going to go ahead, update my template to have a default value. So we'll just say today. That's all we can do for now. And then I want to show my time frame on here. Let's put it maybe on top of the progress bar. And then I'm going to update my time frame. Maybe in the month of February, I want to be able to plank for 3 minutes, right? So we see that up here, and then we're going to get started on that expected progress. So I'm going to put expected progress right under the regular progress bar. So opening this up, I'm heading over to the expected progress. Set a couple of variables using our let's block, the time frame. So essentially, what is the expected progress? It's going to be how far am I from the start date and how far along should I be. So it's basically today minus the start date divided by the total number of days. So let's get all of those values. So I'm going to say the start date is going to be the start value, the first date in this time frame. So I'm going to grab the date start from time frame. In a similar manner, we are going to grab the end date. We're going to use the date end function to grab that. And if we look at what the start is, it is correct. And then if we look at what the end is, that is correct as well. The reason the way I'm checking it is just to put it in the output and make sure that I get the right thing. And then the reason I'm checking it is to make sure the values look right based on the sample value that I have. All right, the next thing we're going to do is figure out the number of days. So this should just be the date between, and then I know this, but you might not know it. Date between is usually, it's negated, so it should be the end date to the start date. I don't know why it's like that, but it just is. So if we do end, start, you can also, it tells you here, but like, it's not a very good at giving you like which direction it should be in. So if I did end and then start and then the unit, which is days, and I put a comma here. Can check here, number of days, 27. I'll just add a +1 in there because I want it to be 28, representing that value. I don't know, what if we did like a different month? Am I just delusional? Yeah, so this is why I check the value. Okay, so because of the way this works, I needed to add 1 to get the correct number of days, so that's what I've done. So I'm going to call it days past, which is basically the number of days that have passed, and that is going to be date between today and the start date in days. Okay, cool. I'm going to check what that value is. All right, that's 47. Oh, okay, whoopsie. Let's move this back to February. Back here, 16 days. Today's the 17th, so I'm also going to add 1 here. All right, cool. So 17 days have passed. I should be at this amount. I am not yet there. Oh, wait, I need to figure that out. Okay, so ideally, this should just be the days passed divided by the number of days. So ideally, I should be 60% done with my progress, and I am not yet there. Reiterate what we're doing. We're figuring out how many days we have to complete this goal, which is going to be 28 days, and then we're figuring out how many days have already passed. That's days passed. So today's February 17th. So 17 days have passed. Because 17 days have passed, if we do 17 divided by, we get that exact same 61% value. Let's go ahead and save it and apply the same exact styling we've done to this progress bar. So here, I've gone ahead and edited this. I add a bar. I want it to be orange. I want it to be a %, and I want it to have 1 significant figure. All right, cool. And I'm also going to hide this. Maybe we'll show it. I don't know. Let's see. Yeah, we'll always show this. Let's go ahead and close this. Let's always hide 2 properties here. So we can see these in our bar. All right. So since all of these guys don't have a time frame, that is something that we need to fix. So let's go ahead and add in time frames. Okay, I also want to add another label in that tells me how fast I'm progressing. So let's go ahead and add that in. So here I'm going to add in another display item. I'm going to say formula. I'm going to say speed. Okay, speed, let's put it at the top. And then here we're going to say, it's just going to be expected progress divided by progress bar. So you can see that that's 3 times, and then I'm going to round this value. Oh, wait. I'll floor it instead, which just gets the lower version of it. Maybe I'll just do like X speed. I don't know. Speed under that label, and maybe I'll hide my divider because I don't really care anymore. Or maybe I'll put it back. I don't know. Okay, so 0 times the speed divided by 100 times. Okay, that's not bad. Oh, whoops. I'm doing it the wrong way. It should be progress bar divided by expected progress. Okay, great. All right, this one's going to be quick and easy. We are just going to create a second database, store areas, and then create a relation to areas to section off our goals here. So we're going to create 1, 2, 3 sections, and they're going to be of different things. Okay, so we are going to create a 2-way relation where we're going to do goals to areas, and it's going to be related like this externally, and they are 2 different separate databases, and we are going to use this for categorizing goals into different areas or sections or platforms or whatever you want to call them. So we're heading over to the backend page up here. I just created a nice area for us to keep them, and we are going to create a new database called areas. This is going to be all areas. All right, this is going to be the name of that area, and then we only need 1 property right now, which is going to be a relation to goals. So what this does is just relate the areas to the goals so that we can section them off. I'm just going to create 3 different areas. So let's do home. Obviously, you can do different things. You don't even need areas to do this. You can just do it with tags. Let me show that as an example. You can just add a select tag to do this, but the reason I'm using areas is to showcase two-way relations and also to make it similar to this, where I was actually using the areas for different things. Like, for example, the social media area has a bunch of information and it also has those goals up there for those areas. I'm going to link the areas now, so let's open this up. Area should be, where is area? Okay, so it's down here. Let's call this home. And then I'm going to group this, or I'm going to turn it into a board view. Hopefully all the properties stay the same. They did not. Okay, so I'm going to do that, and then I am going to add in all the properties that I want. Alright, so I'm going to group the areas. I'm going to hide the no area group, and then maybe I'll color the columns and sort them manually. Okay, cool. So I'm going to open this up and drag these in. So I like the, let's add in professional development and add in social media. Go inside here. This is professional. This is social media. This is home. This is social media. And I think I can also go ahead and make these large. Okay, cool. So they take up the span of this. For this, we can do it like this. It's fine. Okay, so home. We have our second database to store areas, and we created a relation to the areas to section off all of these goals. We went through how database buttons work. We can automatically style text using formulas. We can use other databases to categorize in a board view. We can also use it in a regular gallery view. We can see that over here. Let's just use the view here. So I can go ahead and group by area. And this one will add the social media area to it. So you can also group vertically, and then you can also group horizontally. Everything here, we did quite a few things in this intermediate section, but it did take our goals database and goal tracker from looking like this to giving us a lot more information, even though it is a little too much information. We can also remove certain pieces of information and still have everything we want to know. Like, for example, let's remove this expected progress, this speed bar, right? So we can put that there, and then we have, maybe we don't even need to see the stylized label, right? Like this. So maybe this is less information, but you can still see everything that you really need to see. So you're at 17.2% of your plank. You're doing it 4 times slower than expected. You are 23% at this 100 value. You can see what you need to see. You can even remove the time frame if it's not relevant to you. Then you have all of this information. You can add back the expected progress, or maybe add back the current label to see this information. You can play around with all this information, but in this intermediate section, we're able to gather a lot more information than we were gathering in this beginner section and have it pop up nice and easy for us to see. We are in the home stretch of our goals tracker, and we've gone over a lot of different things. We have how to create a simple goal tracker, how to add some incrementation to our goal tracker and add a lot of different formulas and a lot of different labels. And finally, we're going to go over the advanced topic of creating nested databases and using buttons to relate databases together. This graphic exemplifies what a nested database actually is. So we have the external goals database here, and as we talked about with the Excel and Word example, the items in this database open up into pages like this. Now, if we had a related database like the areas database, it would look something like this, where we have the goals and the areas as separate entities. Inside our current example, though, we have the goals as an external entity to these granular tracking databases. And why am I calling them granular tracking? Well, that's because it helps us track more granularly how this goal is actually progressing. So let's go ahead and attack the inside of these goal pages and see if they can give us a bit more information. When I initially came up with this idea, it was for something like this. I was creating a lot of different crafts based on Instagram Reels that I had saved, and I really wanted to track what days I was creating those items while having my goal tracker update in relation to those recreations. So here, on the outside of the goal tracker, I can see my engagement with this goal, and I can also see the expected progress versus the actual progress. But inside, I can also see the dates that they were created and some further information about this. And I didn't want to go ahead and create a secondary database that was outside because requirements of this goal database are very different from the internal goal database of one of my other goals. For example, the subscribers database. Here, the granularity looks very different. I'm just seeing a graph looking element of all the different subscribers that I'm getting. And inside the recreation database, I have a couple more properties and I have a gallery view that lets me put in pictures and kind of use this as a scrapbook for all the things that I created. And we want to simultaneously update this 30 days of recreating while also updating this down here. And we can do that with this button over here that adds a new page and also increments the amount on the outside. I'm going to repopulate this section right down over here. So to populate the nested databases here, open up the template and do it inside here. And then after I set it up in the template, I'm going to try and populate it inside these individual pages. So the first thing we're going to do is create the actual nested database. I'm going to use not a linked database, but just a regular database. And you will notice I'm inside the template right here. I'm going to put in a full page database, and I'm going to name it granular goal tracking. Okay. Now here, I'm going to add in a couple of metrics so that I know what I'm working with, and I'm going to use this reference database to populate those metrics. I'm also going to add a linked view of that database. I want to make sure it's this database right over here, and it should be listed under new page, and I'm going to hide the database title and say something like all entries. Putting this up here, this essentially functions as our backend. I like to put backend items inside maybe a red callout so that we know not to touch them, especially when you're building stuff for other people to use. I'm just going to leave it like this for now so we can see what it looks like when we populate the template. So inside plank for 3 minutes, I'm going to populate this template and add an entry here. I'm going to say sample plank entry. And here, and then if I go to the cats one, we can see that sample plank entry will not be visible here because this granular goal tracking database, it's a mouthful, is completely different from this one over here, even though they're named the same thing. Inside here, I'm going to say sample cat entry. And another thing to note here, if you've used databases a lot and used linked databases inside templates, if I delete all of this, it will be gone. If you use templates with linked databases, if you delete this and repopulate the template, this information is still stored inside the properties of the actual goal database. That is not the case for a nested database because the only information about this nested database is all sitting right over here. But if we delete just this view, we can get the information back because this is the backend where it is sitting. Just wanted to make that clear. So I guess I have a metric number, a metric unit, and then the date that this was created, as well as a label. So I'm going to delete all of this stuff here and note that that will delete the sample cat entry and the sample plank entry. Go back inside the template. Inside the template, I'm going to update this database to have a couple more properties. Just using the reference because I've already done this before, but of course, when creating it from scratch, you don't have that reference necessarily. We needed the metric unit, metric number, And this represents the individual metric number for the item. So say this is the 50th second of plank that I achieved, then this will just represent the 50th second. I don't know, that's a bad way. But like for the subscribers or for the daily recreations, it just represents that one day of recreation, the 7th recreation, the 6th recreation, etc., etc. You get the idea. Here, I also have a formula for the label, and I'm going to create some sample entries here, which I will be deleting later. So we want it to say your plus, and add in some space. We want it to say your metric number plus some type of switch statement, which is just a bunch of different if statements for, just going to keep th for now, metric unit. So this should say your 11th follower. Just need a space here, and you should have a space before this as well. So 11th follower, that is correct. Let's go back to that conditional concept of figuring out whether this works for all use cases. So 1th follower doesn't make sense, so we need an edge case there. Some of the other edge cases that I already know are 2 and 3. So here is where I'm going to put in the switch statement, which is just a bunch of conditional statements strung together, and I'm going to use an ifs statement. Now this is a new type of statement that we haven't talked about, but we are going to use the metric number to decide what we are going to actually send. So an if statement is different from an if statement. So an if statement has 3 properties. The first one is the condition, the second one is going to be what to return if it's true, and the third one is going to be what to return if it's not true. An ifs statement has as many properties as conditions plus 1. So each condition is going to be a property or a parameter or an argument, and it's going to have if true what's going to happen, and then it's also going to have the final else statement, which is the default case in a traditional switch statement. Let's do metric number. Let's start here, starting simple. And I am going to use a let's statement here as well, because I know that we're going to need or a variable later. Let's call it switch num. And we are going to set it equal to metric number for now. And if that switch num is 1, return st instead of whatever we're returning, and then otherwise let's return th. So we have the variables, we have the output, which is this long string looking thing, and we have the let statement that closes down here. So clearly this isn't working, and we can see the edge case right over here. So what we're going to do is add another case, which is going to be if it's 2 or if it's 3. Okay, if we save that, we see that this does work. Now I'm going to throw out different numbers. So say we have 113, it works. And if we have 11, it works as well. But it doesn't work for 101. So let's try to change this up, and that is why we had this variable up here. So instead of metric number, we are going to get the final digit of the metric number by using mod 10. So mod 10 just takes this number and then divides it by 10 and gives us the remainder. And if you remember remainders, it's just going to be whatever's left over after we evenly divide this number by 10. So we have the 301st follower, but now we encounter another problem where we have this. So the 311st follower is incorrect. So we could go ahead and do something like this, where we have mod 100. It would give us the switch after 100, but this follows that if we use something like 21, this is incorrect as well. Okay, so we'll say switch num mod 10 equals 1, and switch num does not equal 11. Okay, it is a little bit of a case, so we are going to do the same thing here. So 2, and it's not equal to 12. All right, so 21st, 11th, your 11,111th follower, your 21st follower, your 31st follower, etc., etc. This seems to be foolproof, but I am doing this on the spot, so if you see any errors, please feel free to call me out in the comments. There is not really a foolproof way of debugging Notion until you notice it in your granular goal tracking, so this is what we have here. So I'm going to switch this into a calendar view because 99% of the time that's what makes sense for me, and I'm going to add in a gallery view as well. So I'm going to put in a gallery here with simple entries. Just going to add in the label, and I'm also going to hide anything that shows up here and call it cards. So this should work, but now comes the interesting part, probably what you've been waiting for, which is how are we going to theoretically link these two databases together just using a database button. I'm going to create a button called another one, and we are backtracking a little bit here because we are no longer going to use this another one functionality if we want things to update down here inside this page. And here, I'm going to add a page to the granular goal tracking database. The name is going to be the name of the page that we're on. All right, and then I'm going to edit a couple of properties. So the date is going to be the date that was triggered. The metric number is going to be the metric number from this page, the current metric plus 1, and the metric unit is going to be the metric unit from this page. So how we're doing this is this only works because there is a this page variable in Notion. So since we're able to access the page that we're currently on, we're able to get properties from the current page and push those into this granular goal tracking database. So I'm going to use this page.goalUnit. Need to update the stuff over here. Only thing we will need to update this page, and we are going to edit the current metric to do the same thing. This page dot current metric plus 1. And this plus 1 value, I'd also like to add in a variable to define that at the very top here. This is going to be 1 for now. And it automatically detects that it's a number. Here, we are going to add in amount to add. And down here, we are going to add in amount to add as well. This helps when you want to create multiple buttons and just say, okay, I want to add in 10 or add in 50. Let's try it out and see if it actually works. All right, so I'm going to open up the plank. I'm going to add a new page, and I'm going to try adding another one. And it seems like I have plank for 3 minutes here. I want to see if the actual value is updated. So I'm going to put in the label. All right, it's a little weird. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear out all of this, and I'm going to update the template. It's all trial and error. So here I'm going to make sure that instead of getting just the direct goal unit, because we're under the assumption that this is always going to be plural, so I'm going to substring it, which kind of strips that final S off, and I'm going to do 0 to -1. To fix that problem, I'm going to go add in the actual label to the calendar, and I'm going to sort by date, descending, and I am going to probably make it small and load just 10 pages at a time. That is the big giant secret on how to relate databases to their nested components. We created a nested database, we populated it in all the pages, and we updated it with a button. We can synchronize them using essentially the this page functionality. Because we have this page sitting there, we can use the functionality to kind of update the page that we're on along with the nested database. Then, oh yeah, I did go over this. So we can make buttons easier to duplicate and update by putting that value in, and this will give you some errors, but then it'll go away in a second. But we can go ahead and say something like, say we're above 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, and we're no longer testing just one at a time. We are doing 10 at a time. I quickly just set the name of your 333rd subscriber. It's a really long name, so I'm going to wrap page titles and say I add another one, and then I can also add another 10, your 344th subscriber. It's a very easy way to update things, and I love tracking and I love updating things, so yeah, and it also updates this, which is what's important as well. So I'm going to remove the another one from here so that everything that we're updating is inside, so it updates both things at once. So here we can say your 34th second, so you hit your 34th second plank. And on top of all of that, you can also individually update how this button works after you've populated the template. For this, it's a plank, right? So I don't want to know my 34th second plank. I don't like how that's worded. So here, I can change what this actually looks like. Instead of doing it like this, we can do something like, you hit a 34-second plank. Okay. Holy shit. Okay, and you can also add in icons here. You can add in some type of icon right here, like where it's a dumbbell, and you hit a 34-second plank, and it's gonna pop up. It's gonna pop up here because it's a default template. And you do that, and then ta-da, you hit a 36-second plank. I love nested databases, especially with this amount of functionality. It's really nice. If you at any point were confused about what was going on in the video, please comment down below. I respond to all comments with thorough explanations. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button if the video helped you out. Also, I made this animation myself, so please like this video if you like it.